March 29th, 2008. An ordinary Saturday night in São Paulo. Families returning home, children sleeping in the back seats of cars, the weekend coming to an end. But at the London building in the north zone of the Brazilian capital, something was about to happen that would forever change how Brazil sees human evil. It was almost midnight when the neighbors heard it. A sharp sound, like something heavy had fallen. Some thought it was a car crash. Others didn't even pay attention. But the doorman knew that sound wasn't normal, and when he went out to check, he found something that would give him nightmares for the rest of his life. In the building's garden, illuminated only by the dim light of street lamps, was a child, a 5-year-old girl, brown hair, pink pajamas, and blood. So much blood. Her name was Isabella Nardoni, and what happened that night in apartment 62 on the 6th floor is a story so disturbing, so impossible to believe, that even 17 years later, it still makes us question how far the cruelty can go from those who should protect a child. But before we get to that terrible night, before we talk about blood, about lies, about a cut screen and a 6-story fall, we need to understand who Isabella was. Because she wasn't just a statistic. She wasn't just a victim. She was a 5-year-old child with dreams, with fears, with a whole life ahead of her. Isabella was born on April 18, 2002, daughter of Ana Carolina Oliveira and Alexandre Nardoni, but the marriage didn't last. As happens with so many families, the relationship ended when Isabella was still very young. Ana Carolina got custody of the girl. Alexandra had visitation rights on weekends, and that's when Ana Carolina Jatoba entered the story. Ana became Alexandra's new partner, Isabella's stepmother, and over time, the couple had 2 children, Pietro and Cauã, 2 boys who, on that fateful night in March 2008, were in the apartment. 2 boys who were Isabella's half-brothers. 2 boys who, according to subsequent investigations, witnessed things no child should ever see. The neighbors of the London building had an opinion about the Nardoni family, and it wasn't exactly positive. They spoke of fights, screams, violent arguments that regularly happened on weekends when Isabella was there. "Stop, Dad, stop!" That phrase was heard more than once by building residents. A child begging, screaming for help, and nobody did anything. Because, after all, it was family business, right? Who are we to interfere in how parents raise their children? This mentality, this reluctance to get involved, is part of what allowed the horror to unfold without interruption. But let's go back to that night, March 29, 2008. The Nardoni family had gone to the supermarket. Alexandra, Ana, Isabella, and the 2 young boys. Security cameras captured images of them shopping. They look like a normal family. Alexandra and Ana even kiss at one point. Isabella is there, a small child among adults, carrying shopping bags. Nothing in those images suggests what is about to happen. They leave the supermarket around 11:30 p.m. They get into the family's Ford Ka, and they drive back to the London building. The trip takes about 6 minutes. 6 minutes that, according to later investigations, were the beginning of the end for Isabella. Because inside that car something happened. Later testimonies and forensic analysis revealed that Isabella was attacked in the car. They hit her hard enough to make her nose bleed. A key or a ring cut her forehead, and she started bleeding. Why? What could a 5-year-old child do that would justify violence? The answer, according to testimony from a prison employee years later, was simple and devastating. She wouldn't stop being annoying. Isabella was doing what 5-year-old children do, probably complaining, maybe crying, asking for attention, being a child. And for that, she was violently attacked inside a moving car. The Ford Ka stops in the London building's garage at 11:36 p.m. This was confirmed by the vehicle's GPS. There's no discussion about this time. It's a concrete fact. Alexandra gets out of the car holding Isabella. The girl is bleeding from her nose and forehead, but the wound was covered, probably with a diaper, because between the car and the apartment, there's no trail of blood, not a single drop, which means someone was actively staunching the bleeding as they went up. Why? Why hide that the child was injured? The obvious answer, because the injury would reveal that something was wrong, that violence had occurred. They enter apartment 62 on the 6th floor. Alexandra, Ana, Isabella, Pietro, and Cauã. It's 11:36 p.m. In exactly 13 minutes, Isabella will be dead in the building's garden. 13 minutes. Less time than it takes to watch a sitcom episode. Less time than it takes to shower. 13 minutes between arriving at the apartment and the death of a child. What happened inside that apartment during those 13 minutes is something we reconstruct through forensic evidence. Bloodstains, bone fractures, and the calculated coldness of those who tried to cover up a murder. When Alexandra entered the apartment carrying Isabella, something inside him broke, or perhaps it never existed, because what he did next wasn't an accident. It wasn't an uncontrolled moment of rage. It was deliberate. It was cruel. It was monstrous. He threw Isabella on the floor. He didn't let her fall. He didn't place her carefully. He hurled her forcefully against the apartment floor. How do we know this? From the forensics. Because when a child falls accidentally, the injuries are different. But when a child is thrown with force, the fractures tell a specific story. Isabella suffered fractures in her pelvis, in her left wrist, cranial trauma, and something even more disturbing, fractures in the genital region, internal injuries indicating violent impact. Imagine the scene. A 5-year-old girl, already bleeding from her forehead, being thrown to the floor by her own father with enough force to break bones. The terror she must have felt, the pain, the confusion of not understanding why Daddy is doing this. And then she started screaming. Of course she did. She was a panicked child, injured, terrified, so she screamed, called for help, probably tried to run, but with injured legs she could barely move. And that's when Anna Karolina Jatoba decided to make her stop screaming. The forensics were very clear about what happened next. Marks on Isabella's neck, petechial hemorrhages in the eyes, lungs, and heart, protruding tongue, fractured hyoid bone. All are classic signs of asphyxiation by strangulation. Anna Karolina put her hands on Isabella's neck and squeezed. Squeezed while the girl struggled, while she tried to breathe, while her little hands probably pulled at Anna's arms, silently begging for air. The forensics estimated that Isabella was strangled for approximately 3 minutes. 3 minutes is an eternity when you can't breathe. 3 minutes of pure agony. And then Isabella stopped moving. She became unconscious. Maybe they thought she was dead, but she wasn't. Not yet. Because Isabella still had a pulse when she was thrown out the window. This is confirmed by the autopsy. She was alive when she fell. Unconscious but alive. Her heart was still beating. Her lungs were still trying to function, despite the damage. But now Alexandra and Anna had a problem. They had an unconscious child, seriously injured, bleeding in their apartment, and they needed a story. They needed an explanation. So they staged a scene. Alexandra grabbed scissors from the kitchen, went to Pietro and Kawan's room, and cut the window's protective screen. Didn't tear it, didn't accidentally rip it, methodically cut it, creating an opening large enough to pass a child's body through. Why the boy's room? Why not the room where he said he put Isabella to sleep? Because the story they were creating required it. The narrative of a burglar who broke in and threw Isabella out the window wouldn't work if the cut screen was in the empty room. It had to be in the room where the children slept, to suggest someone entered through there. But they made a mistake. Several mistakes, actually, because even calculating criminals don't think of everything when they're panicking. Alexandra returned to the living room where Isabella was unconscious. He picked up the girl's body and carried her to the boys' room. And here we need to pause to understand something. Isabella weighed about 20 kilograms. She was small for her age, but 20 kilograms of dead weight isn't easy to carry. And while Alexandra carried her, Isabella continued bleeding. The forensics found drops of blood in the hallway, at the bedroom door, on the floor near the window, and all these drops had a specific characteristic. They were projected from a height consistent with someone carrying a child. Alexandra Nardoni's height. He reached the window, held his unconscious daughter, and threw her. He didn't let her fall. He didn't gently place her out. He hurled her with enough force for her to clear the parapet and fall in free fall for 6 floors. 20 meters high. Isabella fell through the dark night, unconscious, unable to protect herself, unable to scream, her small body spinning in the air until hitting the building's garden with an impact that made neighbors think it was a car crash. But the cruelty didn't end there, because while Alexandra was throwing his daughter out the window, Anna was in the apartment cleaning evidence. She took the diaper that had been used to stop Isabella's bleeding in the car, the diaper that was now soaked with the girl's blood, and put it to soak in water in the service area. Why? To dilute the blood, to destroy evidence. While Isabella was dying 6 floors below, Anna was trying to wash away proof that the child had been injured before the fall. She also tried to clean the bloodstains on the floor, in the hallway, at the door, but she didn't have time. And blood, when it penetrates porous surfaces, doesn't come out easily, especially when you're just using a damp cloth in panic. The forensics would find these cleaning attempts, the chemical reagent used by the experts, revealed bloodstains that had been partially removed, the way the blood was spread instead of simply cleaned. All of this told a story of frantic cover-up. But let's go back to the garden, because while Anna was cleaning and Alexandre was going down the stairs, Isabella was dying alone in the cold of the night. The doorman arrived first. He saw the child and immediately called for rescue. A neighbor, a nurse, also ran to help. She tried to check vital signs, but it was obvious that Isabella was seriously injured. And then Alexandre appeared. He ran down from the building, passed through the door, ran to the garden, and started shouting, "Thief! There's a thief in the building! They killed my daughter!" Witnesses said he was screaming, but there were no tears. His eyes were dry. He seemed desperate, but in a strange way, theatrical. Because it was theater, he was playing the role of the devastated father, when in reality, he was the killer. The ambulance arrived at 11:49 p.m., exactly 13 minutes after the family car entered the garage, 13 minutes between arrival and emergency call. The paramedics did what they could, but Isabella was dying. The multiple fractures, the severe cranial trauma, the asphyxiation that had damaged her internal organs, everything added up was too much for such a small body to handle. Isabella Nardoni was declared dead on the way to the hospital. She was 5 years, 11 months, and 11 days old. But the story Alexandre told police that night was very different from reality. He said they came home from the supermarket, that he went up with Isabella, who was sleeping, and put her to bed, that he went down to help Anna with the other 2 children, and that when he returned to the apartment, he found the screen cut and Isabella fallen in the garden. Simple, clean. A burglar entered, cut the screen, threw the child, and fled, all in a matter of minutes, without leaving traces, without stealing anything, without being seen by anyone. And the police initially had no reason to doubt. After all, what father would do this to his own daughter? But some things didn't make sense from the beginning. First, the time. From when Alexandre said he went down to get Anna and the children until the moment the doorman heard the noise, only 4 minutes passed. 4 minutes for a supposed burglar to enter the apartment, cut the screen, asphyxiate a child, and throw her out the window, and then flee without being seen. Impossible. Second, there were no signs of break-in. None. The apartment door was intact. The lock worked perfectly. There were no tool marks. Nothing. Alexandre claimed he might have left the door open. But even so, how would a burglar know exactly which apartment to invade in just 4 minutes? Third, nothing was stolen. The apartment had electronics, jewelry, money, but nothing was touched. A burglar who enters an apartment, commits a barbaric crime, and leaves without taking absolutely anything? It didn't make sense. But what really started to dismantle Alexandre's story was the forensics. Because forensic science doesn't care about narratives. It's not impressed by tears or cries of indignation. Forensics just looks at physical evidence and tells what really happened. And the evidence was all over the apartment. Blood. Lots of blood. On the sheet where Alexandre said he put Isabella to sleep. On the living room floor. In the hallway. In the boys' room. On the front door handle. But the most revealing, the shape of the blood stains. When blood falls, it creates specific patterns depending on height, speed, and angle. It's basic science. And the stains in the Nardoni apartment told a very specific story. The drops in the hallway were projected from a height consistent with someone 1.78 meter tall, carrying a child. Alexandre's exact height. The stains in the living room showed that someone had been standing bleeding in that location for a prolonged period, as if an injured child had been left there, unconscious, for several minutes. And the cleaning attempts were obvious. Areas where blood had been rubbed, diluted, partially removed. But you can't fool modern chemical reagents. They find blood even when it's invisible to the naked eye. Criminal expert Rosangela Montero, who worked on the case, was very clear in her testimony. The morphology of the bloodstains indicated that Isabella was carried by someone of the father's height. All evidence pointed to Alexandre. And there was more. The scissors used to cut the screen were found in the apartment's kitchen. It had screen fibers stuck to the blade, but it had no fingerprints. Someone had cleaned it. The diaper Anna put to soak, it had Isabella's blood. A lot of blood. More blood than you'd expect from a simple cut on the forehead. The family car? Blood stains on the back seat, on Isabella's car seat. Small, but definitely there. And the timeline didn't add up. Alexandre said he spent 5 minutes going up with Isabella, and another 4 minutes getting Anna and the children. But the car's GPS and the emergency call time showed everything happened in 13 minutes. 13 minutes to go up, Put Isabella to bed, go down, get the family, go up again, and find the tragedy. It wasn't physically possible following his version of events. But the most incriminating? The neighbors. Several residents of the London building gave similar testimonies. They heard screams that night, child screams. "Stop, Dad, stop." Violent arguments, the sound of fighting. And this wasn't new. The neighbors reported that on weekends when Isabella visited, there were always screams, arguments, sounds of violence. One neighbor in particular was very specific. He said he heard the sound of something hitting the floor, then screams, then silence, and then the sound of the ambulance. The timeline matched perfectly with what the forensics were discovering. Still, Alexandra and Anna maintained their stories. They were the victims. A mysterious burglar had entered and thrown Isabella out the window. They were being unjustly accused at a time of unimaginable pain. The Brazilian media went into a frenzy. The Isabella Nardoni case was on every newspaper cover, every newscast, every conversation. A survey showed that 98.2% of Brazilians knew about the case. It was impossible to escape it, and public pressure was immense. Posters appeared throughout São Paulo demanding justice. Vigils were organized. People were horrified and wanted answers. But Alexandra and Anna had lawyers, good lawyers, and they knew that as long as they didn't confess, the case would depend entirely on circumstantial evidence. Because there were no eyewitnesses. Nobody saw Isabella being thrown out the window. Nobody saw the asphyxiation. The only ones who knew exactly what happened were Alexandra, Anna, and possibly 2 small children who were too young to testify. So the investigation had to be meticulous. Every drop of blood analyzed, every fiber examined, every testimony cross-referenced. And gradually, the truth began to emerge from the evidence. The clothes Alexandra wore that night were found in his sister's apartment, on the same floor. An apartment that was empty, under renovation. Why would his clothes be there? The official explanation was, they were a construction worker's clothes. But the experts didn't believe it. Alexandre's father, Antonio Nardoni, a tax lawyer, entered his son's apartment 2 days after the crime. Before the location was properly sealed, he said he only went to get clothes. But why? Why was it so urgent to get clothes that it couldn't wait for police to release the location? And there were the phone calls. On the night of the crime, Anna called Antonio Nardoni, a 32-second call. Police were able to prove this call happened after Isabella had already been thrown out the window. What did they talk about? What was so important to call at that specific moment? Years later, a prison system employee would give an explosive testimony. She said Anna Carolina had told her that Antonio Nardoni advised the couple to simulate an accident, that he was involved in the cover-up from the beginning. Antonio denied everything, said he only received a call saying Isabella had fallen, but that he thought it was a fall inside the apartment, not from the window. But the pattern was clear. The Nardoni family closed ranks. They had a story and everyone would stick to it no matter what. Meanwhile, across town, Ana Carolina Oliveira was burying her daughter, Isabella's mother, the woman who had given birth to that girl 5 years earlier, who had cared for her, loved her, protected her, and who now had to say goodbye in a way no mother should ever have to. Isabella's funeral was one of the largest São Paulo had ever seen. Thousands of people showed up. Strangers who never knew the girl but were touched by the brutality of her death. Flowers covered the coffin. Tears were shed. And Ana Carolina was there. Destroyed, but dignified. She didn't scream, didn't make scenes. She just cried silently as her daughter's coffin was lowered into the ground. But she made a promise that day. A promise she would repeat many times in the following years. I will fight for justice. Isabella didn't die in vain. They will pay for what they did. And she kept that promise. In the days, weeks, and months that followed, Ana Carolina became the face of justice for Isabella. She gave interviews, appeared on shows, kept the case in the public eye, because she knew that if people forgot, if attention shifted to something else, Alexandra and Anna could escape. But Brazil didn't forget, and the police didn't give up. On May 29, 2008, exactly 2 months after Isabella's death, Judge Mauricio Fossen decreed the preventive detention of Alexandre Nardoni and Ana Carolina Chatoba. They were charged with triple qualified homicide, by asphyxiation, cruel means, by impossibility of the victim's defense, she was unconscious, and to conceal another crime, the previous assaults. They were also charged with procedural fraud for trying to alter the crime scene. The arrest was broadcast live on television. All of Brazil watched Alexandra and Anna being taken away in handcuffs. Their pale faces, their empty eyes, No sign of remorse, just the calculated coldness of those who still believed they could escape. But they underestimated the power of scientific evidence, and they underestimated the determination of a mother who had lost everything. The trial was scheduled for March 2010, 2 years after the crime, 2 years of Isabella dead, 2 years of Anna Carolina living without her daughter, 2 years of a nation waiting for justice. And when the trial finally began, the whole world was watching. But that's a story for the next part, because what happened during that trial, the revelations, the testimonies, the evidence presented, that deserves to be told with the time and attention the case demands. For now, I leave you with an image. A 5-year-old girl, brown hair, sweet smile, a child who should be alive today, at 23 years old, maybe in college, maybe working, maybe in love, maybe with dreams and plans for the future. But instead, Isabella is in a cemetery in São Paulo. Her life was stolen from her on the night of March 29, 2008, stolen by the very people who should have protected her. And although Isabella's body has been buried, the truth about what happened that night remains alive, preserved in forensic reports, in testimonies, in evidence that doesn't lie. The next part of this story will dive into the trial, the 5 days that paralyzed Brazil, the evidence presented, the devastating testimonies, and the verdict that would finally give Isabella what she deserved. Justice. But justice for a dead child is never enough, is it? Because nothing brings her back. No sentence undoes what was done. No punishment restores a stolen life. All that remains is the truth, and the promise that those responsible will face the consequences of their actions. But before we end this first part, we need to talk about the details the forensics revealed. Details that are hard to hear, but necessary to understand the magnitude of what happened that night. When the experts examined Isabella's body at the Medical Legal Institute, they found a catalog of horrors. Each injury told part of the story, and together, they painted a picture of unimaginable suffering. The 2-centimeter cut on her forehead, caused in the car, probably by a key or ring, an injury that bled profusely, staining her hair, the collar of the pink t-shirt she was wearing. The fractures, broken left wrist, pelvis fractured in multiple points, fractures that happened while she was still alive, because living bone breaks differently from dead bone. Isabella felt these fractures, felt the excruciating pain of her bones breaking when she was hurled against the floor. The cranial trauma, not just from the final impact in the garden, but from something that happened before. The experts found subdural hemorrhage indicating her head had hit something hard with significant force. Maybe the apartment floor, maybe a wall, maybe furniture. And the injuries nobody wants to talk about, but that were there in the reports. Fractures in the pelvic and genital region, internal injuries suggesting extremely violent impact. When you throw a child to the floor with enough force to cause these injuries, it's not an impulsive act. It's an act of pure malice. But perhaps the most disturbing were the signs of asphyxiation. The fractured hyoid bone. This is a small horseshoe-shaped bone located in the neck, just below the chin. It's extremely difficult to fracture this bone accidentally. You need to apply direct and sustained pressure on the neck. It's a classic sign of strangulation. The petechial hemorrhages, small red dots in the eyes, lungs, and heart, caused by the rupture of tiny blood vessels when pressure in the body increases during asphyxiation. Isabella struggled to breathe while being strangled. Her body desperately fought for oxygen that wasn't coming. The tongue protruding from the mouth, another classic sign of asphyxiation. When you can't breathe, your tongue unconsciously projects forward, trying to open the airways. The purple nails, cyanosis, lack of oxygen making the extremities bluish. Isabella was conscious for at least part of the strangulation. She knew what was happening. She felt her airways being blocked. And here's something that should make any person stop and think. Asphyxiating someone to unconsciousness takes time. It's not like in movies where the person faints in seconds. In real life, strangling someone until they become unconscious takes 2 to 4 minutes of continuous and intense pressure. 2 to 4 minutes. Think about that. Count to 240. Imagine applying deadly pressure on a 5-year-old child's neck for all that time. Imagine feeling her struggling, hearing the sound she's making trying to breathe, seeing the terror in her eyes, and continuing for minutes until she stops moving. This isn't an accident. It's not a moment of anger. It's a conscious choice, maintained for a prolonged period, to take another person's life. Anna Carolina Jatoba made that choice, and she maintained it long enough to leave Isabella unconscious, but not dead, not yet, because Isabella was still alive when she fell. The experts were absolutely clear about this. There was coagulated blood in her lungs. This only happens if the heart is still pumping when you're bleeding internally. If she were already dead when thrown, there would be no coagulation. So Isabella fell 20 meters still alive, unconscious, unable to protect herself, but with her heart still beating, with her lungs still trying to function. And when she hit the garden floor, her small body suffered multiple traumas that finally killed her. Fractures in almost every bone, massive internal hemorrhage, fatal cranial trauma. But she didn't die instantly. When the doorman arrived, when the nurse tried to help, Isabella was still technically alive. Her heart was still beating weakly. She was still breathing, though barely. Imagine that child's last conscious moments, if she had any. Imagine waking from the faint, caused by asphyxiation, only to realize you're falling, that you're flying through the air without understanding why, and then the impact, the pain, and then nothing. Or maybe she never woke up. Maybe she remained unconscious until she died. We can hope so, because the alternative is to think Isabella was conscious and terrified in her final moments, and that's unbearable. The paramedics did their best. They put her in the ambulance, tried to stabilize her vital signs, but it was too late. There was too much damage, too many internal injuries, too much trauma. Isabella Nardoni was declared dead at 12:14 a.m. on March 30th, 2008, 44 minutes after the family car parked in the garage, less than an hour since they left the supermarket looking like a normal family. And during all this time, 2 small children were in the apartment. Pietro, 3 years old, Kawan, 11 months old, Alexandre and Anna's children, Isabella's half-brothers. What did they see? What did they hear? That's a question that haunts the case, because Pietro was old enough to remember, old enough to understand that something terrible was happening. Neighbors reported hearing a child screaming, "Stop! Dad! Stop!" Some thought it was Isabella, but others thought it could be Pietro, seeing his father do something horrible to his half-sister. The children were never officially interviewed. They were too young, and the law protects minors from having to testify, especially against parents. But imagine carrying those memories. Imagine growing up knowing what your parents did. Pietro and Kawan were taken to live with Anna's family after the arrests. They were protected from the media circus as much as possible. But you can't protect children from memories. You can't erase what they saw. And here's something the media talked less about. Isabella wasn't just a random victim. She had been the target of jealousy and resentment for years. Reports from family, friends, and neighbors painted a disturbing picture. Anna Carolina Hatoba was jealous of Isabella, jealous of the time Alexandra spent with his daughter on weekends, jealous of the child support he paid to Anna Carolina, jealous that Isabella existed, a constant reminder that Alexandra had a life before her. And Alexandra, he saw Isabella as a burden, a financial weight, an obligation. Reports say he constantly complained about having to pick up and drop off the girl on weekends, about having to share his small apartment with another child. Isabella wasn't welcome in that house. She was tolerated, and on weekends when she visited, the tension was palpable. Neighbors reported frequent arguments, screams, the sound of things breaking, and always, the voice of a child crying or begging to stop. How long did this go on? Months? Years? How many weekends did Isabella spend in that apartment afraid? How many times was she mistreated, yelled at, possibly assaulted before that fatal night? And why didn't anyone do anything? That's the question that haunts not just this case, but so many cases of child violence. People hear, they see, they suspect, but they don't intervene, because it's uncomfortable, because it's not our business, because parents know best. Except sometimes parents don't know best. Sometimes parents are the perpetrators, and children die because adults who could have helped chose to look the other way. The London building was forever marked by what happened there. Residents moved out. Apartment values dropped. People avoided passing by. The garden where Isabella fell became a site of macabre pilgrimage, with people leaving flowers and notes. Eventually, the building had to put up a sign asking people to stop, to leave the residents alone, to allow them to try to move on. But how do you move on from something like this? How do you sleep knowing a child died there? How do you look at that garden without seeing her body? And for Isabella's family, for Anna Carolina, how do you move on when your daughter was murdered? Anna Carolina tried. She really tried. In the months after the funeral, she gave interviews, appeared on shows, publicly fought for justice. But at home, alone, she was shattered. She kept Isabella's toys, the clothes, the drawings the girl had made. Isabella's room remained untouched for years, a shrine to a child who would never come home. Friends reported that Anna Karolina sometimes woke up in the middle of the night thinking she heard Isabella, that she set breakfast for two before remembering, that she had constant nightmares about that night, imagining the terror her daughter must have felt. And the guilt, the impossible guilt of a mother who trusted her daughter's father, who sent Isabella for those weekends even when the girl didn't want to go, who didn't notice the signs, or noticed them but didn't act fast enough. Of course, Anna Karolina wasn't at fault. She couldn't have predicted this. No mother sends her daughter to her father's house expecting the child to come back dead. But survivor's guilt doesn't care about logic. It corrodes you anyway. And while Anna Karolina suffered, while Brazil mourned, Alexandra and Anna were in prison preparing their defense. They hired the best lawyers they could afford, and those lawyers began building a narrative of wronged parents, of an incompetent investigation, of a media that had judged and convicted the couple before any formal trial. They claimed the evidence was circumstantial, that blood in the apartment didn't prove murder, just that Isabella got hurt at some point, that the timeline was confusing and police were misinterpreting the evidence. They claimed the case was being driven by public pressure, not by justice, that Alexandra and Anna were convenient scapegoats for a society that needed someone to blame. And they hammered one point repeatedly. There were no eyewitnesses. Nobody saw Isabella being asphyxiated. Nobody saw her being thrown out the window. Everything was interpretation of physical evidence, and physical evidence can be interpreted in various ways. It was a smart defense, and in many cases, it could have worked. Reasonable doubt is all you need to avoid a conviction. But they underestimated something. They underestimated how much forensic science had advanced, and they underestimated the meticulousness of the forensics team that worked on the case, because the forensics left nothing to chance. Every drop of blood was mapped. Every fiber was analyzed. Every detail was documented with photographic precision. And when everything was put together, the story that emerged was crystal clear. There was no ambiguity. There were no plausible alternative interpretations. There was only the cold, hard truth of what happened in that apartment. Isabella was attacked in the car, was thrown to the apartment floor with enough force to cause multiple fractures, was strangled to unconsciousness, was thrown out the window while still alive, and the crime scene was deliberately altered to look like a burglary. Each step of this sequence was proved by physical evidence. Evidence that doesn't lie. Evidence that has no political or emotional agenda, just cold, scientific facts. And those facts all pointed to two people, Alexandre Nardoni and Anna Karolina Jatoba. But convincing a jury is different from convincing experts. Juries are composed of ordinary people, people with emotions, people who sometimes want to believe that parents couldn't do this to their own children. The prosecution knew this, and they knew they would need more than just evidence. They would need to tell the story in a way that the jury couldn't ignore, in a way that the truth was so obvious, so inescapable, that there was no choice but to convict. And they had 2 years to prepare, 2 years between the crime and the trial, 2 years to build a case so solid that not even the best defense lawyers could destroy it. Meanwhile, Brazil waited, because the Isabella Nardoni case had become more than just a crime. It had become a symbol, a turning point in how the country dealt with domestic violence and child abuse. Laws were proposed, discussions were initiated, child protection organizations received more funding and attention. Isabella's name became a rallying cry for change. But for Anna Karolina, it wasn't about symbols or social change. It was about her daughter. It was about ensuring that the people who took Isabella from her faced justice. And on March 22, 2010, almost 2 years after that terrible night, the trial finally began. The Santana Forum in São Paulo was surrounded by hundreds of people, journalists from across the country and even from abroad, onlookers, Anna Karolina's supporters, protesters demanding justice. Inside the courtroom, Alexandre Nardoni and Anna Karolina Jatoba sat in the defendant's dock. Their faces were careful masks of calm, but their eyes betrayed the fear they felt, because they knew, even if they didn't admit it, that all the evidence was against them, that the truth was about to be exposed in a way they couldn't control or manipulate. And on the other side of the room, sitting with silent dignity, was Anna Karolina Oliveira, the mother who had lost everything, the woman who had promised to fight for justice for her daughter. She looked at Alexandra, the man she once had a relationship with, the man with whom she raised a child, the man she trusted with her daughter's life, and he couldn't maintain eye contact. He looked away, because even he, with all his legal training and defense preparation, couldn't look into Ana Carolina's eyes and maintain the lie. Judge Mauricio Fawcon entered. The court stood, and the trial that would paralyze Brazil for 5 days was about to begin. But that story is for the next part, because the trial deserves to be told with all the details, every testimony, every piece of evidence presented, every moment of tension, every shocking revelation, and most importantly, the verdict. The moment when 7 ordinary citizens had to decide the fate of 2 people accused of one of the most heinous crimes Brazil had ever seen. For now, remember this. Isabella Nardoni was 5 years old when she died. She liked to draw. She liked to play. She liked to laugh. She was a normal child with normal childhood dreams. And she deserved to live. Deserved to grow. Deserved to see her 6th birthday. Her 10th. Her 16th. Deserved to go to school. Make friends. Fall in love. Have her own family someday. All of that was stolen from her on the night of March 29th, 2008. And although nothing can bring Isabella back, although no amount of justice can undo what was done, we still have the obligation to remember. Remember Isabella not as a victim, but as a child who lived, who loved, who deserved better. And remember that monsters are real. They don't live in dark forests or haunted castles. Sometimes monsters are the people who should love us most. That's the most terrible truth of all.